Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this short recording about the course Leading for Change. I'm Woodruff and with me here is Deb Holder. We want to spend the next few minutes, reviewing what we found from your responses to the exam for the course, which might be useful for students who've completed and might also be useful for students who are about to undertake the course. So over to you, Deb, for a thumbnail sketch of how things went.
Thanks, Ian, and I just wanted to congratulate you for preparing well, and for most of you, I hope you're satisfied with the results that you got. It's all down to how you prepare and then how you execute your preparation on the day of the exam. And it was really evident from the marking that some of you had prepared very well and that you had a plan when you came into the exam about how you were going to approach each question. As you know, that there were 5 options for you to choose from, and your job was to choose 3 of those 5 options. Unfortunately for some of you, you did all 5. And whilst that's admirable, what a waste of your time when we only marked the first 3 questions. So my advice, students, whether you have finished your tasks for this particular subject and heading to the next RMIT subjects, or for new students coming on board the Leading for Change program, please read very carefully what is required of you in the exam process. The first part of every question was about theory, and the second was about a case example or putting that theory into practice and asking for your opinions on what might happen. And for some of you, you put a lot of emphasis and time into the first part of the question, and you didn't answer the second part. For some others of you, you answered the second part of the question and not the first part. So my advice to you, and what we'd ask you to strongly do, is to make sure you read every part of the question. And typically, good on you, you Singaporeans sure know how to plan. I noticed on many papers, down the side of the papers, were really good steps on how to navigate your way through each question, and congratulations on doing that. As I said before, planning is everything. However, a few tips for next time, and they are that if you are going to give a good explanation of the theory, don't just launch into the theory without an explanation of what it is you want your reader to understand. If, for example, you're going to talk about Kotter's 8 steps, please tell me that it's going to be that you're explaining.
Thanks, Deb. I think what we might do next is go through the questions for the exam paper. We're going to start with question 1, which is a question on organisational change models. I'm going to do part A, and then Deb, you can do part B. Now, both parts are worth roughly the same mark, so we'd expect roughly the same amount of content written for each. So question 1, organisational change models. Part A says, how might a change model improve the likelihood of success in organisational change? A few important things to note there. One is that we've asked you to talk about a change model, and we've used the singular, so we're asking for a change model, not a collection of them.
So even though we've talked about lots in the class, don't feel you need to expand on any more than just one. Yeah. It's not a good use of your time.
It will get confusing if you've got more than one change model, I think. So, how might a change model improve the likelihood of success in organisational change? So the question becomes, there's a change model you're going to talk about, and the focus of your conversation or your writing is how that change model can enhance or improve success of the change process. A lot of students have written quite comprehensive notes about what a change model is, but kind of ignored the second part of the question, which is how does that model improve likelihood of success? Students who did very well said, okay, I've got a change model, and let's say it's Lewin's 3-phase model. I've described that. I've talked about some of its limitations or its most appropriate applications, because that's an element of critical thinking that we value in the exam. And then those good students, good answer students, have gone on to say, and this is how that particular model helps to enhance the organisational outcome. There's quite a variation between a simple description of the model and that higher level answer which says, here's my model and here's why it can help achieve better outcomes.
Yeah, some students would be concerned about whether they need to put in text referencing in an exam answer. The answer is no. It's enough to say you're going to use Lewin's change model to describe it to us comprehensively, what it means, and to answer that second part, as Ian said, about how do you describe. and how might it be beneficial in terms of successful change. In Part B, we talk about what you might do to implement that in ANZ in this instance, and how might you use that model to assist in a major change process. And so what might be of an advantage to you is to talk about the Lewin model, for example, and to talk about what, as a manager, they might go about their business in the ANZ implementing change. So as you know, that 3-step model says, I need to unfreeze what it is that I need to change. And so it might be that you describe in your Part B response the actions that you might take as a manager in ANZ to unfreeze those behaviours, depending on what it is you're going to describe. And it doesn't have to be in too much detail. We're not asking you to be an expert of ANZ, it's impossible. But we just want your best idea, if you're giving advice about how this model would be of benefit to ANZ. How would you go about unfreezing those behaviours that you would like to change? You might be talking about the business case for a new way of doing business. You might show statistics to staff about where the competitors are beating ANZ in particular areas of the business. There might be a range of what we call disruptive behaviours that would allow us to say, oh, I can't keep going the way I'm going. All of those factors will be helpful in trying to assist staff to see that what we've done now is not going to be the right fit for the future. That's what we call unfreezing. The second part is that we look at looking at what those new models might be. So we need to think about what would be the preferred behaviours that we'd like to adopt. And so you might be discussing some of the business case with ANZ, with their staff, about why we would need to do that as we've unfrozen those behaviours. What might be the new behaviours that we want to reinforce? What's going to be beneficial to ANZ going forward? And then the third part of that response is around freezing the behaviours that you now see in place, that you wish to go forward, and how you reinforce that behaviour in staff that are ready to join you in that change journey. Not everybody does. We've talked about resistance in other lectures, haven't we? But what we know about this model is we want to get those behaviours in place and then give it a go, and then go back and review that later on. So that's some of the discussion you might have in your paper.
And I guess, we've talked about Lewin's model, and obviously there's more than Lewin. Some of you have used the Chartier model, and others have used Kotter's 8 steps as an example of a change model. And although you've got different frameworks and different models, what you're actually describing is very much the same thing. So, for example, a student who wrote about Chartier's model used the boxes around the model, the 6 areas or dimensions, as headings for her response to the answer. And that was quite logical, because signalling that you're using Chartier helps us as the examiners to know, okay, that's your model, and then we follow the process as you describe it. So it doesn't really matter which model you choose, it's more about how you integrate the model, in the case of Part B, into a solution for, in this case, the ANZ Bank.
Don't be afraid to use diagrams, it's absolutely fine. But do remember, we want your narrative, we want your discussion about how you would put it into practice. So don't just think that you would write one sentence under a dot point to describe what that would mean for Part B. We do need a little bit more.
We want controversy, we want you to be critical about the theories and the application.
Don't always agree. It's really important to mix it up.